What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Urban Renaissance Man podcast. And I am your host, Mr. Adrian Lawson. The ladies call me Big Cat. Because I'm a tiger in the bedroom, as you already know. But, on a more serious note, today I want to talk about a very, very serious topic, and this is something that is very, very important to me, and it should be also very important to a lot of people, black people around the world. Today's show is going to be a little longer, so bear with me, let this ride, and, while you're in the bathroom, taking a milk bath or whatever, just soak up some of this good game. Today I'm going to go very deep. Today I'm going to talk about how black people's history has been hidden and covered up from us. And it has been presented to us in a way in which we, one, in the school system, especially in the public school system, a lot of black kids are not learning about their history. And this is a personal experience from myself. Me personally, I know a lot about, black history, but it wasn't because I had a teacher in school teach it to me. This was all things that I had to go and learn by myself. Whether that was watching, movies or documentaries, or was reading books, etc. So I didn't learn any of the black history that I know now because of school. Now, I will say this. The only black history, or so-called black history, but I really don't consider this black history, that they teach in school is about slavery and civil rights. That's all they teach. That's the only quote-unquote black history, which is history of black people, that you will learn about in school. You're going to learn about slavery and civil rights. And I kind of feel like this is done intentionally because there is so much history. It's so much information out there about the great things that black people have done around the world that is so innumerable, we couldn't even count. We couldn't even grasp the amount of info that's out there. But why are we not taught these things in school? We're constantly taught about European history and the great things that white people have done in the history of the world. Whether you're learning about the Romans, whether you're learning about the kingdoms in England, or the ones in Italy, or you're learning about different things in ancient times, such as the Visigoths and the Vandals and the Vikings. So you don't have a lot of history that is taught in school about black people. And I want my black people to understand that this is a paradigm that was done intentionally. And this paradigm of not teaching black people their history was set up thousands of years ago. Let's go deep here. I'm gonna go deep in this show. This is gonna be a really deep show. So let's go back here. So I want my black people out here to understand that when slavery kind of first popped off, right? When slavery first popped off and you had the beginning of the slave trade, a lot of black people during that time were referred, especially in Europe, they referred to black people as Moors. Moor, the term Moor. And what Moor meant, it meant a swarthy, dark person. And black people were referred in Europe as Moors. That's why If you look at documents, they will refer to black people as Moors. Prime example, if you look at the work of Othello by Shakespeare, Othello's name is Othello the Moor. And we know that Othello is a black man. Also, if you go throughout Europe, there are so many statues and paintings and artifacts of black people, I mean dark black people, who were in Rome. They weren't slaves. They were noble men and women who went to Europe and basically civilized Europe. Because you have to understand is that when the Moors came to Europe in 711, Europe at this time was going through a dark age. So the Moors basically came to Europe and they civilized it. They brought sciences, they brought maths, they brought different things to Europe. And this is why even till today we learn about the Moors. But in history, people will try to tell you that the Moors were not black, that they were, Arab or whatever. And this is not true. Moors were black African men. Even if you look at the word Moor, M-O-O-R, means black. It's not a people. The word Moor is a color. That's why even if you look at Spanish today, the word moreno means brown. Mora means blackberry. So this term Moor was used to refer to black people during this time, right when slavery and these things kicked off. And I say this to say, or to get to the point of, is that when slavery came around, white people who wanted to institute slavery, they had to do things to objectify black people. Because if you as a black person knew your history, or if you knew that you were a Moor and that people who looked like you, who were from your area, did some great things, you would revolt and rise up. You wouldn't be enslaved. So they had to subjugate black people by putting out these negative things about them. And this is what they did. They covered up our history. They began to burn things. Even if you go back to all the different places in, Africa now, when whites came, they burned a lot of those things. So we don't have these things to show. So anyway, they begin to subjugate black people by showing them in a negative light. And even during slavery, blacks were not allowed to read or write, as you know. So they were not allowed to learn about themselves. Now, that's very interesting. Now, if you're a slave, right? If black people are so-called supposed to be primitive, they don't know anything, they have no history, they've done nothing great in the world, why would you not allow them to read and write? Now think about that now. That's very deep. Why would you not allow these people to read and write if they so-called come from a dark continent to where people are running around with Tarzan? Why would you not want them to read and write? Because they knew that if they begin to read and write, they would discover that, hey, I'm really not a slave. We're Moors. I'm not a slave. So this is why they begin to subjugate black people. And then black people today, we have taken on this slave mentality of not wanting to read, not wanting to write, not wanting to learn about ourselves that they set up hundreds of years ago. We haven't been able to break that yet. We're still doing what they, instituted for us years and years ago. It has affected us even till today. And even till to today, they hide our history. They do not want us to know about our history. Why aren't black kids learning about the Moors? Why aren't they learning about these people? And also, just since I mentioned the Moors, as you guys know, the black girl who married the prince, Prince Harry, how Prince Harry's mom or aunt or somebody, she wore this brooch after they got married of this black, figurine, and people were saying that she wore this to throw salt on the black girl that her son married. And what a lot of people didn't know is that jewelry that she was wearing is actually called black amour jewelry. It's a very expensive jewelry that is worn throughout Europe amongst royalty and noble people. And it is, what it is it's pictures or figurines of old Moorish people who were in Europe hundreds of years ago, like I was mentioning, who came in and brought many great things. That's why even if you go over to Europe today, they will tell you that the Moors were black people, and there's still many statues. There's the Moors, they built castles, they built all kind of things. And I want my black people to go to research this and to look this up. Look up the Moors. Also, when they're telling black people that you only come from a slave and that nothing else has went on in Africa, and they make black American people look at Africa as this negative place where nothing has been brought, where nothing has came out of, so therefore you shouldn't go over there. They paint Africa as a negative place. This is a bunch of bull crap too. And you know what? And since I'm on this is interesting. So last year, I was talking to a IB senior at my school, and he's, graduated now. But we were talking about, history, and I was telling him that I am, interested in Black history. And so immediately he said, okay, so you like, slavery and civil rights stuff? And I said, well, kinda, but no, I'm more, concerned with the history before slavery. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was what history? Basically implying that black people had no history prior to slavery, and that white people somehow came over to Africa and saved us and brought us to this place and enslaved us, and this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when he said this, I was appalled. I was really shocked, because I was like, how can he not think, how can he not know that black people have had a rich history prior to slavery that no one likes to talk about? No one likes to tell us about our history. And you have to understand, it is very important to know who you are and where you come from. Because if you don't know who you are and where you come from, then you will allow someone else, i.e. white people, to tell you where you come from. And they can fill your head with whatever they want to. They can tell you that you're a bunch of savages, you're a bunch of thugs, you're dumb, you ain't good for shit, and you'll believe it because you don't know your history. You don't know where you came from. And this is why I have to get now on some of my HBCUs. And although I respect all the historically black colleges and universities that are, doing their thing, that are open, I feel like we do need them. But I feel that we need to bring the consciousness back to these schools, because when these schools were first built, right? And, well, I wouldn't say first built, but let's say this. During the 80s and the 90s, I will say this, HBCUs had a certain consciousness to them. You know what I mean? When a black person went to one of these schools, they came out knowing about their history. They knew about different things in Africa. They knew these things. They had a certain level of consciousness about them. Even if you look at shows in the 90s, like A Different World. And on this show, a lot of people on this show went to these schools and they would tell you different things about black people, and they would really drop some knowledge and some jewels about different black history, because during this time these schools had a consciousness about them. You know what I'm saying? These schools back then, they would bring in people like Dr. Khalid Muhammad. They would bring in guys like Minister Farrakhan. They would bring in Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Shahrazad Ali. They would bring in these people to drop knowledge on the students so that they can better understand who they are. So that when they go out in the world, they can be secure about who they are and be secure in themselves. That way, white people cannot fill their heads with this nonsense, like that guy who I talked to, who's a senior, about how blacks are only just a slave. But now at these, HBCUs, the money that used to be used to bring in Dr. Khalid Muhammad or Shahrazad Ali, it's used to bring in damn Lil Yachty and Lil Pump and all these niggas. And when it comes to bringing in people who are going to drop knowledge on the students, they want the stuff for free. But when it was a collection plate to bring in Lil Yachty, they raised the money overnight. But to bring in somebody who's going to give you some information that's actually valuable to you, that you can use, all of a sudden, well, brother, we going to have a car wash, and we going to raise the money like that, and we going to sell bean pies and newspapers, and then we'll get the money, and then we going to go and do this. You know what I'm saying? They want stuff for free. They don't want to bring in the folks who are going to help them. And this is the issue. You have to bring consciousness back to HBCUs. That is what I want to happen. Okay? But anyway, that has been today's show. I am going to go deeper in this subject in the future. I'm going to talk about many other great things that black people have done. You dig? I'm going to talk about all kind of things in the future. I'm going to have shows where I just break down black history. I'm going to talk about different people who are black, who've done great things, who've made great things, invented great things, who you would never even know about. I'm also gonna do a show about the Egyptians, and because a lot of people tell you that the Egyptians weren't black, and I'm gonna do a whole entire show about that, explaining how it would be impossible for the Egyptians not to have been black. So, but that's for another time, another day. But anyway, I feel like I'm going on and on here, but that's been today's show. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure to tune in next time. You can follow me on Instagram at The Urban Renaissance Man. You also can email me at The Urban Renaissance Man Podcast. And y'all make sure to get your boy up to 100 subscribers so I can take live calls and we can really chop up some good game in this piece. You dig? I'm out.